In the heart of Osun State, Nigeria, there is a river that people both respect and fear. It is called the River of Osun, and it has been part of the land for centuries. The river is not just a body of water. It is believed to be alive with spirits and powerful forces. Local elders often tell stories about how the river is sacred and how the goddess Osun once blessed it with her presence. But along with blessings, the river also holds dark secrets. People in the villages nearby never go near the river at night. They believe that when the sun goes down, the river changes. It becomes dangerous and haunted by restless spirits. Some say they have heard voices calling their names from the water. Others claim they have seen glowing figures rise from the river and then disappear into the mist. Children grow up listening to these stories, and they are warned never to play near the river after sunset. Even adults avoid crossing it at night. Festivals and rituals are performed by priests and priestesses to keep the river calm, but still, many villagers whisper about the curses it carries. The fear of the river is so strong that no one dares to build a home near it. Travelers passing through the forest are always told to reach the other side before darkness falls. The River of Osun is both worshipped and feared, a place where life and death seem to meet. This is where the mystery begins. The river is not just water flowing through the forest. It is a doorway between the world of the living and the world of spirits. And anyone who dares to disturb its peace after nightfall may never return the same. Amara, Tunde, Bisi, and Chike were 4 friends from the same village near the River of Osun. They often sat together in the evenings, sharing stories and daring each other to do brave things. One night, as the moon shone brightly, the friends began to talk about the river and the many warnings they had heard since childhood. Tunde laughed and said, "These are just old people's stories. There are no spirits in that river." But Amara felt uneasy. She had often heard her grandmother whisper about the women who drowned long ago and how their souls still lingered in the water. Still, she did not want to appear weak in front of her friends. Chike, who was the boldest of them all, suggested, "Let's go to the river tonight. If it is truly haunted, then we will see for ourselves." Bisi clapped her hands nervously and said, "What if something happens to us?" But the others teased her until she finally agreed. When the sun set and the night grew darker, the 4 of them carried small oil lamps and drums as they walked towards the river. The forest around them was quiet, with only the sound of insects in the air. The path was narrow, and sometimes they thought they heard footsteps behind them, but no one was there. As they reached the riverbank, the full moon reflected on the water, making it shine like silver. For a moment, everything looked calm and peaceful. Tunde laughed again and said, "See? Nothing is here." But Amara could not shake off the feeling that they were being watched. The air felt heavier, colder, as if the river was waiting for them. They stood at the edge of the water, their lamps flickering. In that moment, none of them realized that by stepping into the forbidden night, they had already broken the ancient rule of their ancestors. The four friends stood by the river, their small lamps glowing weakly in the darkness. At first, it seemed peaceful, but very soon, strange things began to happen. The air around them grew colder, so cold that Bisi shivered and hugged herself. Amara whispered, "Do you feel that? It's like the night itself is watching us." The river, which had been calm just moments ago, suddenly began to ripple even though there was no wind. The sound of water grew louder, almost like whispers. Chike bent down and touched the river with his hand. The water was icy cold, much colder than it should have been. He quickly pulled his hand back and muttered, "Something is wrong." Then they heard it soft singing, coming from the middle of the river. The song was in a language none of them understood, but it was beautiful and frightening at the same time. The voices rose and fell, as if many women were singing together. Bisi's face turned pale. "I told you we should not have come here," she said, her voice shaking. As the singing grew louder, their lamps began to flicker. The flames danced wildly, almost as if invisible hands were trying to put them out. Amara's heart pounded in her chest. She looked into the water and thought she saw glowing shapes moving under the surface, like figures dressed in white. Suddenly, the river gave off a strange light, a pale blue glow that spread across the water. Shadows formed on the surface, long and dark, moving even though the friends stood still. Tunde tried to laugh, but his voice cracked with fear. It's just the moonlight," he stammered, though he did not believe his own words. The forest around them grew silent. Even the insects had stopped singing. The only sounds were the whispers of the river and the eerie voices calling from within. Slowly, the friends realized that the stories of the elders were not just tales, they were real, and they were standing in the middle of them. The strange singing from the river grew louder, filling the night air with a haunting echo. The friends stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the glowing water. Suddenly, ripples spread across the surface, and from the middle of the river, pale shapes began to rise. At first, they looked like mist, but slowly, they took the form of women dressed in flowing white robes. Their faces were pale, almost transparent, and their eyes were hollow, like dark empty holes. The friends gasped in fear. Amara grabbed Tunde's arm and whispered, "We need to go back." But before they could move, one of the ghostly figures floated closer to the bank. Her lips moved without sound for a moment, then a soft voice escaped, echoing unnaturally. To Amara's horror, the spirit whispered her name. "Amara." The sound stretched through the air, chilling her blood. She stepped back quickly, her lamp shaking in her hand. How do they know my name?" she cried. Chike tried to be brave. He raised his drum and struck it once, the loud beat breaking the silence. But instead of chasing the spirits away, the sound seemed to make them angry. The ghostly women let out a sharp, piercing cry that echoed through the forest. The water splashed violently, though no stone had been thrown. Bisi dropped her lamp, and the light went out, leaving a patch of darkness around them. She screamed, "We shouldn't be here." The spirits moved closer, their feet not touching the ground, their hollow eyes staring directly at the group. One of them stretched out a hand, long and thin like branches of a dead tree. The friends could not move. It felt as though the river itself had trapped them in place. The air grew heavy, pressing on their chests. The spirits began to circle them, their voices chanting in that strange, ancient language. That was the first time the four friends truly believed they were no longer alone by the River of Osun. The haunting had begun. The next morning, the four friends sat silently in Amara's house. None of them had slept. Their minds were still filled with the memory of the ghostly women rising from the river and whispering Amara's name. Bisi's hands would not stop shaking, and Tunde avoided everyone's eyes. Chike, usually bold, looked pale and quiet. Amara's grandmother noticed their fear. She sat down with them and asked, "Did you go near the river last night?" At first, no one answered. But when Amara's eyes filled with tears, the old woman sighed deeply. "You children have broken the law of our ancestors." She began to tell them the truth about the River of Osun. Many generations ago, there was a group of priestesses who served the goddess Osun. They were powerful and respected, but one night, jealous men from the kingdom betrayed them. The priestesses were tied and drowned in the river, their cries echoing through the forest. From that night onward, their spirits never left the water. They were wronged, and their souls cannot rest, the grandmother explained. They appeared during the full moon, singing their sorrow. If they call your name, it means they have seen you and marked you. The friends listened in horror. Bisi whispered, but one of them spoke Amara's name. The grandmother closed her eyes and nodded. Then Amara is no longer safe. Once the river spirits call you, they will follow you until they take what they want. The room grew silent. The air felt heavy with the weight of the curse. Chike asked softly, "What do they want?" The old woman looked at him with sadness in her eyes. They want company in their suffering. They want more souls to join them beneath the water. The friends realized the danger was far worse than they had ever imagined. The haunting of the river was not just a story, it was a curse that had now chosen them. That night, the village felt strangely quiet. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and a heavy mist spread across the ground. Amara, Tunde, Bisi, and Chike stayed together inside Tunde's house, hoping that the spirits would not return. But as the night grew deeper, they began to hear the sound of water dripping, even though there was no rain. The lamps inside flickered weakly, and a chill spread through the room. Suddenly, Bisi gasped. On the wooden floor near the doorway, wet footprints began to appear one by one, as if someone invisible was walking inside. The friends froze in terror. Amara whispered, "They have found us." The door creaked open slowly, though no one touched it. From outside came a soft humming, the same song they had heard at the river. The haunting voices surrounded the house, echoing from every direction. Tunde grabbed his lamp and shouted, "Run!" The four of them rushed outside into the misty night. Their feet pounded the ground as they ran through the village paths. Behind them, they could hear the splash of water and the sound of footsteps chasing them, though when they looked back, no one was there. One by one, their lamps began to go out, leaving only darkness. The friends stumbled and pushed forward, desperate to reach Amara's grandmother's hut. But the voices grew louder, whispering their names through the fog. Then it happened. Bisi screamed as something cold and unseen wrapped around her wrist. The others turned just in time to see her being dragged backward into the mist. Her cry echoed once, then was swallowed by silence. When they ran to find her, she was gone. Only wet footprints remained on the ground, leading away toward the forest. Amara fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "We've lost her," she cried. But there was no time to grieve. The whispers were still following, closer and closer. The spirits of the river were not finished yet. The chase had only begun. Amara, Tunde, and Chike burst into Amara's grandmother's hut just before dawn. Their clothes were wet, their faces pale, and their bodies trembling with fear. The old woman looked at them and already knew something terrible had happened. "Where is Bisi?" she asked quietly. None of them could answer. Tears filled Amara's eyes as she whispered, "They took her." The grandmother closed her eyes in sorrow and began to pray in a low voice. When the three friends rolled up their sleeves, the old woman gasped. Strange marks had appeared on their skin, shaped like thin streams of water. The marks shimmered faintly in the dim light, almost alive. "This is the river's mark," the grandmother said. "Now you belong to its curse." The friends begged her to help them, but she shook her head sadly. "Once the river calls your name, you can never be free. You may run, you may hide, but the spirits will always find you. They are patient, and they never forget." A heavy silence filled the hut. Chike clenched his fists in anger. "Then we are doomed," he said. The grandmother looked at him with pity. "No, not doomed, warned. The river has shown you its power so you may tell others. Perhaps your voices can keep the next foolish souls away from its banks." As the sun began to rise, the whispers of the river still echoed faintly in their ears, a chilling reminder that the spirits were watching. Amara shivered as she realized that the haunting would never leave them. Outside, the morning looked calm, the village alive with ordinary sounds. But for the three who survived, nothing was ordinary anymore. They knew that when night returned, the river would whisper again, waiting, calling, promising to take the rest of them one day. The story of the haunted river would live on not as a tale, but as a warning written on their skin. Thank you for watching The Haunted River of Osun. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another chilling Nigerian horror story in English. Comment below which part scared you the most, and share this video with friends who love scary tales. Stay tuned. The next story might be even darker.